Zigoni, zigoni, hunter macaroni.
Well, hi there! This is Sigoni. I am the founder of Sigoni Macaroni, and today we're going to go over the Dreamsicle Tee Crochet Pattern. Now, as you can see, I've already worked up the main body of my top, and I am working on the small. So if you need to find the stitch count for your size, just go to the pattern, which is in the description below. We're going to start off with the mesh section because the bottom portion is so straightforward and I didn't actually take a video of it, so I apologize for that. For the mesh, we're going to chain 3 and double crochet into the very first stitch, so the base of that chain. Then we're going to chain 1, skip the next stitch, and double crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1 and double crochet into the next stitch. And we're going to repeat this same pattern down this row. Chain 1, skip a stitch, and double crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet into the next stitch. We will continue this pattern until you reach the last 3 stitches at the end of the row. And when you reach those stitches, you will do a double crochet 2 together. So I'll show you now. We will chain 1, yarn over, insert your hook into the second to last stitch, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, insert your hook into the last stitch, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 3. And that is your double crochet 2 together. Now chain 3 and turn your work, and you'll double crochet into the very first stitch. Chain 1, skip that chain 1 space from the previous row, and double crochet into the next double crochet stitch, the top of the double crochet stitch. I'll show you a little better here so you can see. You'll insert your hook into the top, oops, I made a mistake there, into the top of the double crochet stitch from the previous round. Chain 1 and insert into the top of the next double crochet stitch. And you'll continue this same pattern down the row and for the next 7 rows. I went ahead and crocheted the next 7 rows of double crochet mesh on our top while we were away. And this is the 9th row, and I am double crocheting 2 together on the last stitch. Now don't forget to count that chain 3 at the beginning of the row as a stitch, so you'll be double crocheting 2 together in that last stitch. Now when you reach row 9, when you're finished with row 9, we will single crochet in each stitch across. That includes the first stitch, the next chain 1 space, the next double crochet, and so on. We will single crochet into each double crochet and chain 1 space in this row. When we reach the end of the row, we're going to tie off our yarn, and this will be known as the right side of your work. So just remember that for the next part. If you haven't already, go ahead and work up your second panel just like this one. Okay, whenever you go to sew your panels together, you put both of them face down, And the first thing that we're going to do is sew the shoulders together. So for me, I'm making the size small. So my shoulders are going to be about 3 inches. Let's do 3.5 inches. So we're going to take that mark, use our stitch marker to mark those stitches. There we go. And we're going to do the same for the other side. There. Now what we're going to do is mattress stitch these two shoulder pieces together. Now I'll show you how I mattress stitch my stitches. You hold your pieces together like this, and we go from the inside out. Let's see if I can do this. Okay, starting from the inside of the first stitch, we pull out, and then we go inside the next stitch, out. The next stitch, just continue mattress stitching into each stitch until you reach your stitch marker. Now you can remove your stitch marker and then weave in your ends. I usually go back and forth a couple of times just to make sure it is in there. And that is how you mattress stitch your ends. So it will look like this. And when you flip it over, that's what it looks like on the outside. Now do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll move to our arms. Okay, once you're ready to sew up the sides, when you're done with your top, we're going to measure out 7 inches for a small. Look at the pattern for your sizing. For size small, we're going to measure 7 inches from the top of the garment down. And as you can see, I've already put my stitch marker down. And starting from the bottom of your work, we're going to do the same thing with the mattress stitching. To make sure everything's lining up as you mattress stitch your sides, I suggest leaving a couple stitch markers every few inches or so, just to make sure that everything's even and you don't have to go back and redo it, if that's something you're worried about. Okay, once you're done with the side seams, we're going to work on the armhole. So after you've flipped your work inside out, so you're facing the right side, we're going to attach your yarn. Attach your yarn to the right side of the seam. So this is the seam. We're going to attach it right before the seam. Chain 1 and single crochet into the same space. And then we're going to single crochet evenly around the sleeve. There's not a specific number. It just, as long as you crochet evenly, making sure that it's not lumpy or uneven. It's usually about one single crochet per row. Now that I've reached the end of my sleeve all the way back to the beginning, we're going to slip stitch into the first single crochet that we made, chain 1, but do not turn your work because we're going to start the crab stitch. If you haven't seen the crab stitch tutorial that I released, I'll go ahead and go over it really quick. We're going to insert your hook into the stitch to your right, grab your yarn and pull through, so you'll have 2 loops. Yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. Now continue working in the opposite direction than you're used to. So since I'm right-handed, I'm going to be working to the right. Grab your hook, grab your yarn and pull through 2. Now again, insert your hook into the next stitch to the right, grab your yarn after I get focused, and pull through those 2 loops. You're going to continue doing this crab stitch back around your sleeve that you just worked the single crochet around. Now that we've gone all the way around with our crab stitch and reached the beginning, we're going to turn our work and slip stitch to that first stitch. Tie off your yarn and weave in your ends. Then you can repeat the same thing on the second armhole. Now this is what your armhole should look like when you're done. Look how pretty that decorative edging is. I feel like it just gives it that extra pop. Now that we're done with the sleeves, we're going to work on the bottom of our top, and we're almost done. We're going to do the exact same thing that we did with the armholes. We're going to attach our yarn right before the seam on our sides. And remember, all of these ends should be woven in already, just to make it easier for you, but I had to do it the hard way because I was too excited. So weave in your ends before you do this. It will make things a lot easier. Now again, we're going to look for our seam and make sure that we tie our yarn right before the seam, and then chain 1, and we'll begin single crocheting around the bottom edge of our top. Now that we've single crocheted all the way around the bottom of our top, we're going to slip stitch to our first single crochet, and we're not going to turn our work because we're going to start the crab stitch. So after you slip stitch to your first stitch, you will chain one, now, as you already know from working the sleeves, we're going to be working to the right. So bring your hook around and insert it into the stitch, the next stitch to the right. Pull your yarn through, yarn over, and pull through two. This is the same edging that we did with the sleeves, so I'm not going to go over it for too long, but I will show you a couple more stitches just to refresh your memory. Continue crab stitching around the bottom of the row, and when you reach the beginning stitch, slip stitch and tie off your work and weave in your ends. Once you've done that, guess what? You just finished your garment. If you have any questions at all, leave them in the comments below, and I hope you enjoy your new Dreamsicle tee.